Alrighty, hello there everyone. I am going to quickly be walking you all through how to go through performing a credit for prior learning opportunity assessment. So the following process is going to describe how to utilize a curriculum assessment to pinpoint curricular overlaps that could lead to students receiving credit for prior learning. So the first two steps are going to look pretty familiar if you have in the past performed a curriculum assessment, have been exposed to performing a curriculum assessment. So the first step is curriculum selection. So this is selecting at least two programs for prior learning assessment. So these are two curriculums that feed directly into each other. So curriculum 1 is going to feed directly into curriculum 2. Step 2 is performing the actual curriculum competency crosswalk. So this is exactly similar, exactly the same process as the curriculum assessment curriculum competency crosswalk. So you're comparing curriculum content to manufacturing competencies at the knowledge, skill, and ability level. So going through each KSA statement and mapping exactly where there is or isn't coverage within each of the two curricula selected. And then where it may look a little bit different, some new content is steps 3 and 4. So step 3 is identifying credit for prior learning opportunities. So basically when you input any of the curriculum coverage into our credit for prior learning Excel template, an auto-populated credit for prior learning opportunity will be populated directly within the Excel. So no input necessary within the actual credit for prior learning column. You'll just put in gap, exposure, or thorough coverage within the two curriculum columns and kind of view that auto-populated opportunity at the topic level. There's 4 different possible opportunities that will populate within that column. One is NA, so that just means that there is a gap within curriculum across both of the curriculum. Give credit or credit opportunity is where we see that curriculum 1 has more coverage than curriculum 2, or curriculum 1 has the same coverage as curriculum 2. So having a student go back through those specific pieces of curriculum would be redundant for learning, and so we could explore the opportunity to give them credit for their prior learning within curriculum 1. There's also student prepared. So student prepared is where a majority of the content and depth of content happens within curriculum 2. So curriculum 1, they may have a very entry-level, very foundational understanding of the specific KSA statement, but within curriculum 2, expand upon that knowledge and really get deeper into the actual being able to master a competency. So they would be coming in student prepared, have a good understanding of it, but not necessarily be applicable for the credit for prior learning opportunity. And then our last opportunity within this tab would be additional content. So additional content just means that there's content within curriculum 2 that isn't present within curriculum 1 at all. So this is just flagging specific topics or KSA statements that are not available within curriculum 1 but are seen within curriculum 2. And then once you can go through your Excel and see all of your credit for prior learning opportunities, it brings us to step 4, which is articulation agreement. So the ability to create articulation agreements through cross-program collaboration. This is where you're working across either education institutions or just across different education programs within the same institution to try and determine ways to allow students to be awarded credit for prior learning, kind of reduce redundant training and accelerate their learning journey. This whole process is conducted by educators for students. All right, so here is an example of kind of what a credit for prior learning stack would look like. So at our base here are example topics that would be applicable for giving students credit. So there's credit for prior learning opportunities. So as you can see, we have curriculum 1 on the left-hand side there, which is our feeder curriculum into curriculum 2 on the right-hand side. So our bottom 3 boxes we see within curriculum 1 are exposure and then 2 thorows. And looking over to the right-hand side, at the exact same level of the 3 boxes, we have 2 exposure and a thorough. So you can see throughout this give credit overlap, either curriculum 1 provides the same or more coverage than curriculum 2, which would result in the give credit opportunity. Looking up into the student prepared boxes, so that's going to be the top box of curriculum 1 and kind of the middle blue box of curriculum 2. We can see that there's exposure within curriculum 1 for this specific topic, but in curriculum 2 there's thorough coverage, so that would result in a student prepared topic. They're introduced to the topic within curriculum 1, but not necessarily have enough of the detailed mastery to be able to apply that credit for prior learning opportunity. Then last, we have additional content. So it's the top 2 boxes within curriculum 2 you'll see here. This is just an example of 2 topics that in theory would be additional content. So content that's not covered within curriculum 1, but is introduced within curriculum 2. Hopefully giving a little bit more of a tangible view here. These are some actual dummy topics that we have filtered into these 2 stacked models here to give a better overview of what exactly we're talking about with the credit for prior learning stacking opportunities. So as you can specifically see through curriculum 1 and 2, we have in the bottom level there, those are all of the topics that are available for credit for prior learning opportunities. So things like condition monitoring, power and hand tool operations, lean thinking, measurement mathematics, and quality assurance audits and procedures. So all of those would be credit opportunities. So they either have the same amount of coverage in curriculum 1 as curriculum 2 or more coverage in curriculum 1 than curriculum 2. So we would identify those as credit opportunities. In the middle boxes there, again, we have those student prepared topics. So examples here are total quality management principles, tolerancing, and blueprint and print reading. So we can see that in curriculum 1, there's only exposure within the curriculum to those 3 topics, whereas in curriculum 2, students gain more of a thorough coverage of those 3 topics. So students would be prepared with that foundational knowledge, but not necessarily ready to continue on within their learning journey. All right, and just at a high level, going to go through what our credit for prior learning Excel format looks like before I get directly into the template. So there's 2 columns, as I mentioned, that are curriculum 1 and curriculum 2. So this is where you'll put in your curriculum coverage, so thorough coverage, exposure, or gap. And then the column to the right, credit for prior learning opportunities. This is where all of those opportunities that we just went through will be auto-populated within the Excel. And these will populate at the KC level, and then a final summary opportunity will populate at the topic level. All right, so now we're here within the actual credit for prior learning template. So the template has a couple of different tabs that you can navigate here. So starting with the first tab, start here. This will just give an overview of the what the credit for prior learning assessment template is all about. But also important to note, we do request that we put in all the institution information for both curriculum 1 and curriculum 2. So this includes things like institution name, address, program name, assessor information, and the credit hours related to the courses being assessed. So that will just go all in this cover tab here. We have an instructions tab. So if you kind of get a little bit lost in the assessment, it's totally understandable. We have a very detailed instructions tab here on like what the assessment is, how to navigate it, why you would perform a credit for prior learning assessment, what you would need, what the different coverage levels mean, and then a little bit more information on the actual template tab itself and some of the output tabs. All right, so I am just going to go over what the tabs look like in the credit for prior learning assessment template. So everything from columns A to J should look pretty familiar. This is basic competency model coverage content should look pretty familiar. So if we're going over things that will look new are columns K through M. So column K, like I mentioned before, is where you're going to input your actual curriculum coverage. So if we're just kind of doing an example here, I'll just say that curriculum 1 has a gap and curriculum 2 has exposure. So then we would see that related to the pyramid stacking that I showed earlier, if we have a gap in curriculum 1, but curriculum 2 has exposure, we're going to be seeing additional content. So content that's in curriculum 2, but not in curriculum 1. Going down here, so you'll see that that opportunity auto-populated at the topic level. So you'll only have to enter the gap, thorough, or exposure coverage within columns K and L. Let's say we have thorough coverage here. So we have thorough coverage here. and exposure here. Credit opportunity, like I mentioned here in our previous slides, if we have more coverage in curriculum 1 than curriculum 2, we're going to see those credit opportunities. All right, so what happens once you fill all of this out? Kind of what can you do with all of this content? So we do have an example of a results summary. So this is based off of an assessment that we have filled out here. At the topic level, you can see all of the credit for prior learning opportunities. This is filled out with dummy data, so no specific curriculum necessarily referenced here, but just something we're using to kind of show an example. So these are all of our credit for prior learning opportunities identified at the topic level within the example credit for prior learning assessment tab, which you will have access to while navigating this template. And then going over to the example results summary tab. So this is where you can see specific topics and then where they fell within the curriculum content or within the credit for prior learning opportunities. So you can see each topic with the curriculum 1 content was deemed to be, curriculum 2 content deemed to be, and then the resulting credit opportunity. So for an example here, we have blueprint and print reading. Curriculum 1 was deemed exposure. Curriculum 2 was deemed gap. So what we know from our credit for prior learning analysis is that if there's more coverage in curriculum 2 than curriculum 1, that's going to be student prepared. So then we can go over here and see that, yes, it was identified as student prepared. And the same thing for all of these other topics here. This is just filled in for any relevant topics that did achieve one of the 3 credit for prior learning opportunities of additional content, credit opportunity, or student prepared. You won't see the results for content that was deemed NA. So then at the bottom here, you'll see the grand total of opportunities across the entire model. So you see we had 8 additional content topics. We had 5 topics that were identified as credit opportunities, and then we had 3 topics that were identified as student prepared. So this pivot table will need to be kind of updated when you're going through. So if you go to, after you finish your credit for prior learning assessment and all of these cells are filled in, you'll go to that results summary tab, go to the pivot table, analyze, and hit refresh. And it'll populate a table that looks very similar to the one that you see here, but is based on your specific organization's data. From there, you can also go ahead and kind of generate your own stacked bar chart example. So be able to look at this results summary and create a stacked bar chart example that looks similar to what we have here for just demonstrating and kind of showcasing the results of your credit for prior learning assessment. All right, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to the OMA. Additionally, we have all the toolkit and resources available here on the landing page. So have fun digging in.